This is the video for connective tissues. So we have this page and this page. Excuse my highlighting in advance. This is my second time trying to do this video. The front page on this packet of doodles looked like this one. It's an epithelium, but we already did those two pages. So we're going to do the two connective tissues. The one for muscle and nerve, save those. We're going to do those separately later. So this first one, I'm actually going to go down to the bottom corner where it says connective tissue characteristics, and I'm going to start there. We have a cell body, we have a ground substance, and we have a fibers or protein threads. The ground substance and the proteins and the fibers, sometimes when we put them all together, we can call them the matrix, remember? The job of the cells is to secrete the ground substance. I'm just going to say sub for substance. And they are far apart from each other compared to some of the other tissues that we see. They're very far apart. The ground substance is sort of like this gel, watery like something that surrounds the cells. And it's going to be a little different depending on which kind of connective tissue we're talking about. So it's secreted by the cells, they make that. And there are protein fibers that hold everybody together. Okay, let's go up to bone, which I already started coloring. So bone looks like this under a microscope. And the fancy tissue names, if you want to say like bone tissue, but you wanted to sound like a fancy scientist, you would say the word osseous. O-S-S-E-O-U-S, or osseous tissue. One way that you can spot a bone cell is to look for osteo, or os somewhere. See, osteo, that's telling you it's probably something with bone. Hence osteoporosis, you know. The ground substance in bone becomes calcified and hard, hence bone. And when you guys catch up with that, I'll do a little bit of highlighting down here. Notice up above, we have a name up here. Those are the type of cells that will become this. So osteocytes become bone. Hence osteo, like I said. Let's slide over to connective tissue proper. Fibrocytes. So we have 4 kinds here that all look a little different. Same thing like we did with the bone. We're going to have its fancy name and then some descriptions and things in here. Let's get some fancy names first. Let's make this one yellow. 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 This first one are the loose tissues. The next one down, this is adipose. Adipose tissue. I only have so many colors. Let's go with this orange. Adipose. The next one down, we are going to fill in the boxes. I'm just showing you the sideways ones while I have my camera set up like this. This is dense regular. And this one is dense irregular. You kind of see where the names come from. Regular looks much more organized, doesn't it? And go with red. Regular. And let's go with this blue. Dense irregular. Orient this and right inside. So for the loose tissue, the ground substance, I'm going to say GS for ground substance. It's kind of jelly-like. The proteins are elastic fibers and collagens. This one is flexible. It's not super strong, but it's still flexible. Adipose, these are your fat cells. It has large open spaces, you can kind of see them on here, to hold those large vacuoles, to hold the fat molecules. And they insulate and give you nutrients. It's like your long-term energy storage, so. Insulation and energy. Dense regular has a lot of strength in one direction. That is a number one. Let's go like this just so everybody can tell. Number one. Everything's lined up the same. So you kind of see how like all the fibers look like they're lined up in the same direction. So they have a lot of strength if you're only pulling in one direction. This is your tendons and ligaments. Your dense irregular one has strength in all directions. They're writing off the paper there, hopefully you can still see it. And we find it in coverings of your joints and organs. Now, those are two kinds of connective tissue. Let's do the other two kinds, the cartilage and the blood. Alrighty. So I'm going to go over to this one. It says cartilage and blood. Just wait a second for everybody to get there. Cartilage. This one I'm actually going to write some stuff up next to their names too. Because there's some traits that all cartilage has that the other connective tissues don't have. Again, this is the name of the cell, chondrocytes, that will lead to cartilage. There's some things that only cartilage is. Avascular means no blood connections. And we're going to see something called lacunae, where our cells are located. I'll label those in a second. Your bone and your connective tissue proper did have blood connection, so I'm going to write this under here in case you don't know what avascular means. cartilage. You can see here we also have different types. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in the types here while we're here. This one is hyaline cartilage. This one is fibrocartilage. And this one is elastic cartilage. I'm just going to make them all the same, so all the same kind of. I like colors. All right. Our chondrocytes, so we can see that word up here, they're the cells that will build cartilage. They're actually these little dudes right in here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw myself a little arrow. I'll turn the page back in a second. Hang on. They're the little dudes that are going to build it. Our little duty cells hanging out in there. Hyaline cartilage has a very firm ground substance. Remember, we're still talking about connective tissue. So there's a ground substance, and there's protein fibers, and there are cells. So our ground substance, GS, is firm. We don't have a lot of collagen in this one, so they're a little harder, this cartilage. Hyaline cartilage is a little harder. And found in, let's say, the larynx, which is in your throat, and parts of your rib cage. The costal rib cage. We'll see more about it. Like, what the heck is that? Where is part of your rib cage where you have cartilage? Fibrocartilage. Now, you notice, let me find something colorful here so I can put it out to you. Notice these things? It's kind of like a pocket where your cells are located in there. Those are the lacunae. Good job right here. L-A-C U-N-A-E, lacunae. And all these things that are moving here, these are the collagen fibers. So this one up here didn't have very much collagen. This one has more. So this is lots of collagen, and they're usually running the same direction. So they're running parallel to each other. All the fibers are kind of going the same way. Fibrocartilage is super tough, and we find it in between your spinal bones, in between your vertebrae. They help to cushion the bones so they don't crunch together. Let's see the spine. Elastic is just what you'd think that word means. It's very flexible. It has lots of elastic fibers. And this is your ear. The outside of your ear and the outside of your nose. They're very flexible parts. Here you can see the fibers run in all directions. As these fibers are parallel. It just is parallel with the arrow pointing the fibers. I'm going to pause here for a second, and then we'll slide over to blood. Blood, I feel like we need to go with red because it's blood, right? You could also draw some stuff on there, like if you want to draw some Hearts. You want to draw some bones, back on bones, go crazy. Specifically for blood, it has a very fluid substance around it. So the actual ground substance is all the proteins that you would find in your blood and the liquid. So ground substance. It's all the proteins in the blood. This one just says blood cells because depending on which one it is, they come from different parts, which we'll see more about when we talk about the circulatory system. So we have mast cells here, and macrophages, and red blood cells. We're not really talking about platelets because they're not really a cell. They're more like a cell fragment. Mast cell. Macrophage, that is a G. And red blood cell. So collectively, all these different kinds of white blood cells, they might just be called white blood cells, but there's really a ton of different kinds. There's even more than this. This is just kind of slowly dividing it up. So again, we're not including platelets since platelets are not really cells, and we're not including the liquid that is plasma. We're only including the two kinds of white blood cells, the two big groups, and then red blood cells. So in a mast cell, their job is to detect whenever something foreign is there. And they can also start the inflammation cycle. So, apologies if the camera's shaking. This table is very shaky, and I'm trying to draw it so that it doesn't shake. Inflammatory chemicals. Like, what the heck's an inflammatory chemical? There's a whole pathway, a whole metabolic pathway that happens when inflammation happens that we'll talk about when we get to the circulatory system. But the mast cells are the ones that can kind of get that ball rolling. Your macrophages are more like big blobs that blob all around the place and eat up anybody who's not supposed to be there. I'll just say invaders for now. We'll see more specifics later, like which ones go after bacteria or all that. But the macrophages are what you usually think of when you think of a white blood cell. And our red blood cells, they're sort of like, you can see one here really well, it's like a donut shape. And they carry oxygen. We're going to do a whole unit on blood. Yeah, stuff coming up later. So for connective tissue, I'd like to see this page that had bone and connective tissue proper, and this page that had cartilage and blood. Right? We will do the muscles and nerves next. See you then.